happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
You're listening to Arkansas Preps Weekly on Natural State Sports, your top source for the biggest news in high school sports across Arkansas.
Now, here we go.
What is up, everybody? Thanks for joining us on episode 71 of Arkansas Preps Weekly here on the Natural State Sports Network. I'm Kyle Sutherland. We'll be joined shortly by the softball guru, Jared Hawthorn. And as crazy as it is to believe, it is postseason week. Now, the 5 and 6A classifications don't start state tournaments for another couple of weeks, but 1 through 4A for those conferences that do have district tournaments, conference tournament, district tournament, whatever you want to call it, that is going on this week. And then, of course, next week we will have the regional tournaments that will decide who will be going to the state tournament. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I know that it's a little bit more of a crazy week with us doing a midweek pod. We appreciate you guys being patient with us on that. So we'll get into kind of the show format here in just a second, but let's go ahead and bring in the softball guru, Jared Hawthorn. Jared, you are repping this week the University of the Ozarks. That's the Eagles, right? Is that their mascot, the Eagles?
Yeah, the University of Ozarks Eagles. We're giving them a little love this week. Coach D up there does a great job, and she's always out. She recruits like crazy. Got a couple of my former players up there. Got a couple more headed that direction in the fall, or one more in the fall, and maybe another one next year after that. So we definitely we love Coach D and everything she's doing, and they got a good program up there and really building towards the future. And she's got some strong class, a pretty strong class coming in. I think that things are looking really bright for them. Brand new facilities up there. I got to say that brand new all turf, like state of the art facility up there. I mean, they have invested in softball and baseball up there, or softball for sure up there, and their whole athletic department looks like they're growing by leaps and bounds.
I got to give it to you. You had said on the preview episode that you were going to wear some sort of attire from an in-state college every single week, and more so directed towards the D2s, the JUCOs that don't get quite as much love as obviously the University of Arkansas, that's ranked as high as number 2 in the nation right now. Big time for them. I know also Rich Mountain. I know that Rich Mountain, I think, split their series last week, but I know as of last weekend they were number 19. So we got a couple of nationally ranked teams in the state in various divisions, but no, it's always good to give some love to the JUCOs, the D2s, the D3s, and all that good stuff. So before we get into it, again, since it's already at the midweek point, so this will release on a Wednesday, and this will be kind of about the times we're getting into the nitty gritty of the district tournaments. Wednesday, Thursday is when, not that the rest don't matter, but saying the higher seed matchups and all that good stuff. But we're going to talk about maybe we'll reference some of the games from this week, in conversation. But as far as in depth, we're going to kind of more so focus on the week previous. That's what we tend to do on these, because normally since we do record on Sundays, so that's kind of the format that we're going to keep it at. But before we do get into that, some quick love to the people who make this show possible. First off, Athletic Field Service of Arkansas, whether infield renovation, lip removal and edging, plus much more. Jeremy Rice and his crew have you covered. Call them at 501-416-1218. That's 501-416-1218. Also, Boom Boom Floor Shine in Southwest Arkansas, covering the entire Southwest Arkansas area. You need some TLC for your VCT. Give them a call at 870-833-0521. And then finally, Chinook Seedery. You like sunflower seeds? They've got 8 different flavors, 8 delicious flavors that is preferred by USA Baseball, USA Baseball, D1 Baseball, D1 Softball. So if they choose it, you should too. Head over there and check out all the flavors that they do have. You can type in referral code NSS Media for 10% off of any order. And also don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, anywhere you listen, we are there. All right, let's get into the conversation. And Jared, we'll just kind of not breeze through 6A. I don't want to use that word, but we'll kind of just touch on 6A real quick, because we talked a lot about Bentonville and what they've done this season, being nationally ranked and all that good stuff. Talked a good bit in the Central about Bryant, which Bryant has been phenomenal this year. You and I have talked about how they have probably surpassed both of our expectations. We had them maybe kind of in that 5, 6, 7 range coming into the year. They had proven really, and even now, still a very good team, but they suffered their first loss, the Lady Hornets did, to the Cabot Panthers. We knew that the Central Conference was going to probably come down to those two, and it certainly has. But we've talked a little bit about Cabot this year. It's been a couple of weeks since we've gone in depth, but coming into this week, won 9 games, including that Bryant loss, or the Bryant win 3-2. And Peyton Nicholson was 2 for 3 with the home run. Addison Cooper she did also hit a home run. Peyton Nicholson and Addison Cooper are 2 of the kids that we have talked about for many years for this Lady Panther squad. And they've got a great senior class. Many of these kids I know not many of them, some of them got a chance to play in that state championship game against Bentonville, and I guess also the following year against Bryant in 2023 as sophomores. But you knew that you had a feeling that Bryant probably wasn't going to go undefeated. That doesn't happen very often. I'm not incredibly shocked that it happened, that their first loss happened at the hands of the Cabot Lady Panthers, just because of the history of these two schools and pretty much the Central coming down to both of them at this point for the most recent memory.
Well, Addison Cooper is a really good ball player. Throwing the ball, hitting the ball, any part of the game you want to talk about, she's a really good ball player. Definitely doesn't surprise me that she's doing big things there at Cabot. Bryant has overachieved, and I won't say that they've overachieved. They've overachieved compared to what I expected from them, early before the year, but they've looked really strong all year. I still don't know which one comes out. If you play 10 times, which one comes out the majority of the time. I think you might get 5 wins from each. It's just they're both really good ball teams. If you played a 3 or 5 game series, it would be just a matter of who got some bounces or who found a blue hit here or there, or something might be the difference in who wins more than the other out of those two. Both really good, strong teams. I think they both have a chance to really push to be right there at the top of 6A outside of Bentonville. Bentonville just looks amazing in every part of the game. So every time the more I see out of Bentonville, it just makes me wonder if there's anybody else is going to have a chance to knock them off. But man, there's about 4 teams that are fighting tooth and nail for who's right behind Bentonville.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, the team that really made some noise in 6A, of course, Bentonville's been making noise all year. We've talked about that, and we really went at length last week after their trip to Melissa. I think it was last week or maybe the week before. I don't even remember at this point. They all run together, but their crosstown foe to the west of them in Centerton, the Bentonville West Wolverines, they had a big week. Now they ended up falling to. I think they actually dropped. Or I think coming into this week, if I'm not mistaken, they had dropped 2 of their previous 3 games. But one of those was to Springdale Harbor. Now they did in between that get a huge win over Rogers. And Jared, this is a team that every year we talk, and we have pretty high expectations for Wesley. Coach Cantrell's a really good coach, and he's got Steph Crittenden. You look at her behind the dish. I mean, she might be the best catcher in the state. I would put her as a top 3, hands down. Maybe the best overall, but she's certainly up there. And they've had a lot that have built around her. Mabry Van Ness is one I know that I've covered and written about multiple times, and Caroline Wilhelm from a couple of years that's now at that's done some really good things at Arkansas Tech. I remember her from a few years. So you go down the line and you think about all these players that did so well for so long, but sometimes I think that there has been some seasons that they would probably tell you they underachieved a little bit. And this kind of win over a really good, especially a Rogers team that has the pitching that it does with Dalen Osborne, even in that game, they hit that's kind of been one of the knocks on Rogers at times, especially in the semifinals over the last few years. They struggled at the plate, and in this game, they had about 6 or 7 hits. Rogers did. So they played pretty well in it. But that's the kind of wins, and especially the way that they hung with Harbor like they did. Now, Bentonville, like we talked about, they're just going to beat up on a lot of people. That's just how it goes. But this is the type of win when you get a win over a top team like Rogers that, again, has been to the semifinal round 3 years in a row and just come up a run short and has another really good squad, like I just said. This is the kind of win for Bentonville West that can really give a team a lot of confidence.
Well, getting a really good win late in the year like this against a quality opponent, it can just cement your argument for who you are and where you're going, and it's such a boost of confidence to your players, to get that win and to know that you're getting close to postseason play and that you're playing well at the late half of the season like you need to be. Because sometimes we see that a lot. Teams play well early and then they kind of fall off, or vice versa. We see some that are just not quite putting it together, and then they get it together and go on a run. Well, those late quality wins, man, they mean so much to a team, and especially against just strong opponents like that. I really have been impressed with the last week, 10 days from Bentonville West. Kind of took me a little bit by surprise, especially on the Rogers win. And Rogers is a really good team. I didn't quite expect that, but Rogers has also kind of been a little bit of a night and day squad this year. Like, they play really well, or they just don't. They haven't had a lot of middle ground. They play really well about 75 or 80% of the time, and then when they do have a bad game, it seems like it's a little bit more of a bad game.
Yeah, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Rogers played Bentonville the closest, either Harbor or Rogers. I mean, which is not shocking because, those two are two teams that have been highly ranked throughout the year. But yeah, they lost three. I know that Rogers lost 3-0 to Harbor on it was like April 7th, April 8th, something like that, and then lost 3-2 to Bentonville. So yeah, that West is. Sorry, guys. I think I was clicking something, and I think I actually accidentally X'd out of it. Anyway, the West, what I was saying, that was really weird. I've never done that before. The West is just what we expected. I mean, it's just one of those to where it's just ultra competitive, and that's why. What was it? I think our top three teams preseason. I think it was maybe them, and then Bentonville, Harbor, Rogers, and then maybe somebody in Cabot. I can't remember exactly who it was, but yeah, I mean, that's why all those teams are always so heavily thought of, is because they just produce year in and year out. Okay, now this is where we're going to need to take. I always make the joke, not so much this year, but in years past, about when we get to 3A, how I'm gonna need to take an Advil, or I should have taken one before we started recording. Jared, this was the one that, so for those that don't know, kind of the format of when we do the rankings, obviously we keep up with stuff through the week. Usually Sunday morning, I'm a very early riser, so I'll get up and I'll read my MLB recaps, my softball recaps, all college baseball, all that good stuff. And I'll start working on the rankings. I'll have my quiet time and all those good things. And I will start on the rankings. And usually I might have to take a walk or something. And, like I'll do like 3 classes, take a walk, come back, finish the 3. And then I'll send them to Jared, and we'll review them and talk them over and stuff like that. I did every class mostly with, you debate with yourself a little bit. It's natural to do that, but mostly without a whole lot of issue. I get past like 3 and I'm like, dude, I even told Jared, I'm like, dude, I don't know. Like, there's some of those weeks where I'm just like, I don't know. So I just went with, I'm like, you know what? We're just going to go based off. I'm not really one to usually do this, but I'm like, we're just going to go based off of what we saw last week. That's the best I know how to do this, because it's just, you've got this team here that is playing really well right now. This team's on a little bit of a skid. But Jared, I will tell you, one that has experienced some struggles, and it's not for lack of grit. I mean, and I'm talking about Sheridan. The kids have fought. They have fought. I mean, Coach Hoffman has had a bunch since he's been there that took over from that dynasty that they had pre-COVID. You know, a lot of these seniors were young freshmen at that time, and they have fought and they fought and they fought, but they've come up short. But they, as of tonight, so Tuesday, referring to a game this week, and of course Monday, their last 3 games they've pitched all shutouts, and that was against El Dorado, Bauxite on Monday, and then Lakeside 5-0 on Tuesday. And I know that last week they had Genoa Central, a 3A school that's quality. They're in our outside looking in right now. They got up on them. They had to walk them off last week. If Sheridan is to make a deep run, which I would not be shocked if they do make another deep run and possibly get to and maybe win another state championship, I think that these 2 weeks in particular, I'm going to start with the Lady Jackets here. I think these 2 weeks, really the beginning of this one and maybe on as we continue to go, but as well as last week, those are going to be 2 weeks that they look at and say, hey, this probably was the catapult to our season and really got things going for us.
Well, I've heard over and over and over with Sheridan this year, so-and-so's banged up this week. So-and-so's banged up this week. And it's, you know, somebody different every week. So somebody's banged up. This was banged up. They've still won a lot of games, a whole lot of games. And, you know, of course, obviously going into the season, losing Mary Lamb is a huge blow. And then, you know, throughout this year, they've had player after player, maybe just a week at a time or 2 weeks at a time that have, you know, been banged up or out for just a game or two or even playing hurt. Sheridan's a really good program. And no doubt, I mean, they won the state championship last year. They were the early favorites in 5A. The big, I guess the thing that's going to be the staple that gives them the chance to continue and have a chance to win state this year is, can they get fully healthy to make a run right here at the end? There's no doubt about the amount of talent they have. You know, the Sterretts, you know, Skylar Sterrett and her little sister, is it Sadie Sterrett?
Sadie Sterrett.
And then, you know, Cooper Terry, we've talked about 100 times on the show and what a great arm she is. And there's just so much talent there. You know, Clark, you could name all 30 kids and they're all quality and they're all talented. But Sheridan's their cue or their thing that they got to have going through the next 2 to 3 weeks is, can they get healthy enough to be themselves? If they are themselves and they are pretty healthy for the next 2 to 3 weeks, I feel like they have a real chance to make a deep run and maybe even get back to the state championship.
So, speaking of Sheridan, it's actually we got our first ever live reporting in the history of this show. So, actually, Coach Hoffman sent me it. So, keep in mind as we're recording, this is right after the Lakeside game. So, they did not have the Sterretts tonight in the Tuesday game against Lakeside. And this is a key stat right here. They had not had a pitcher throw 7-inning complete game until this past Monday night. Now they've had that happen 2 nights in a row. That's major news right there. Because, I mean, we're almost through the entire season, and the defending 5A state champions haven't had, and because of injury, of course, haven't had that. And now they've got that in late April, almost March. That's something to really keep an eye on.
Yeah, that I'm telling you, the health part of Sheridan and whether or not they can keep their whole crew together, because there's no doubt they have the talent. They have the talent. They have the bats. They have the defense. They have the pitching. Within that roster, they have what they need to go win state championship. If they have all of those at their disposal, if they are healthy and they are able to do what they can do, they're just really good. And the whole question will be, do you have all of your tools to go do your job? And if they do, you better look out if you're playing Sheridan. Now, if they don't, it changes things. So the whole key to everything for me for Sheridan is, how is their health and do they stay healthy for the next 3 to 4 weeks?
Yeah, no question. And I look at, of course, they barely beat, I think it was Whitehall 3-2, and Whitehall has been playing phenomenal. I mean, really about like what we thought that they could be even over the past few years. They're 9-1 in conference, I think, coming into this week, and so that's going to be a now. Whitehall currently is 2 games back. I know, at least as of Tuesday, before all the games. Or actually, you know what? I take that back. It looks like the score has been inputted for Lakeside for Sheridan on Tuesday. So then you got Whitehall this Friday. So that's going to be a big one right there, because Whitehall they've still got an outside chance at the 1 seed. Not looking great, but I mean, a 2 seed here, if they beat Sheridan and then they beat I guess they got Arkansas High left next Friday. They're not completely out of it, but it's looking like it's going to be a 2 seed, but there is nothing to shake a stick at right there. I mean, yeah, Whitehall has been incredible this year. I mean, they have really, I think this is the year, the last, 2 years or so, I have felt like Whitehall's, I mean, I know that I think it was in 23, they upset BB as a 4 seed in the first round of the state tournament. And so, I mean, really, I think this is the year that Whitehall has really put it together completely, and we'll see if they can make a run. Looking at the East, so GCT has pretty much run that for the most part all this year, and I went on Jonesboro radio on Tuesday afternoon with Cade Carlton on the drive, and we, of course, previewed this matchup, and I said, man, here's the thing about Searcy. They're really tough. They had to replace a 4-year starter in the circle and Abby Busby, and that's always hard. And they got some good wins off the bat at first, and they're going to battle. It's looking like they're going to battle for that 3 and 4 spot with Valley View either Friday or next Tuesday. I know it's coming up, but Searcy's going to the postseason nonetheless. Well, they beat they got a really big win over Greene County Tech 5-4 in the first game. Now, as I checked the score before we were recording, it was 11-7 Greene County Tech in game 2, and I think it was the bottom of the home half of the 5th inning, if I'm not mistaken. So it's still looking like that Greene County. Now, Marion is not completely out of the race. They have they're 1 game back of Greene County Tech, and of course, that's also going to help. When you look at just that's going to help, of course, Marion's case, the fact that Searcy kind of did them a favor. Actually, right now, looking at the standings because of that game. Now, if Greene County Tech does pull, which, of course, this will be by already out by the time that game is over. But if they pull that out, then they still will have a 1-game lead. Greene County Tech will in the East. So that is that there. In the West, so Jared, we'll talk about the East-West here real quick before we touch a little. I know we've touched a ton on the Central, so we won't spend a whole lot of time on that conference. But the West, depending on which way the wind is blowing that day, you had Greenwood that smoked Farmington earlier in the year, and then Farmington smoked Greenwood last week. If the wind is blowing 10 miles an hour and if it's sunny, then maybe Farmington wins. If it's a little bit cloudy and the wind is at 20 miles an hour, maybe it's the other way around. I don't know.
Well, just following trends, right now, Farmington's playing better by the game. Greenwood has struggled a little bit over the last 3, 4, 5 games. Not saying anything to the quality of the teams overall or what they've been this year. But if you're just looking at the last 3 to 5 game stretch for each team, Farmington is looking better every game. And some of that is we talked about this a lot early, and now we're kind of past that. But a lot of those schools that were heavily involved in state championships in basketball, it seemed like it took them 2 or 3 weeks to really get going, to get into softball mode. And now Farmington seems like they're full blown into softball mode and really rolling. Greenwood, I'm not sure what's going, because they play really well and have beat some really good teams, and then they'll take a loss that you kind of scratch your head a little bit, and then they play really well and beat some really good teams, and then they take a loss. And I've kind of noticed that throughout the season with Greenwood, and I don't know how much of it is maybe just having not a great game pitching, or if there's injuries playing into it. And I haven't had the chance to reach out to Coach Hart over there and talk to him a little bit. I talked to him early in the season and kind of about what he thought he had and where he thought he stood, but I haven't got to talk to him any more recently to kind of say, hey, what's causing our flat path here, and what do you expect through the rest of the season from that? But he's a really good coach, and I think he'll kind of straighten that projected path, for what they're going to do over the next few weeks. Greenwood's a strong team. I think they'll right that ship just a little bit and kind of get rolling. Farmington is looking better all the time. I'm going to go back and touch just real briefly since you brought them up. Whitehall, you're talking about them being the 2 seed, over there. Whitehall has looked better this year than I have seen Whitehall in the time that we've been covering this. And you're right. They've always had talent, but this seems like the year that they've kind of put it together. And I noticed right before we came on to do the podcast tonight, they beat Arkansas High 2-0 in a really hard-fought dog fight of a game. Both pitchers pitched really well. Macy Lee pitched she only threw 80 pitches and they got beat 2-0. She was filling up the strike zone. There wasn't a lot of walks, there wasn't a lot of errors. It was just a hard fought ball game. I had talked to somebody earlier and they had brought up hey, Taylor Pascarella for Arkansas High was an absolute beast in that ball game. She had 6 putouts from third base and hit the ball well. Just played lights out. And that they had a great game both ways. Whitehall and Arkansas High, just one of those grudge max, softball games that went down to the wire. But Whitehall has continued. I say that to say this: Whitehall has continued to win those close games this year. That in years past, they either split those games throughout the year or they lost more than they won of those. This year, they found whatever that recipe is, and they found a way to win all of those little, close games. Every single one of them that I've noticed that those close game grudge matches, they came out on top. So they found something. They got something cooking down there at Whitehall this year.
I do want to mention real quick, because we've talked about the Central a lot, but we haven't talked, and I'm going to have a lot of Bologna fans that are probably going to be upset with me because they've told me, hey, you haven't mentioned us really by name. At least you talked about our conference, but you haven't talked about us. So keep it like that, because Jared, I'm telling you, look, Coach Sullivan might be a little bit crazy. And obviously every time I say that about a coach, I'm being facetious, but so they split with BB tonight, Tuesday night. Obviously a great, defending state runner-up. They've been in our top 3, top 5 pretty much all year. Now, I think this was a recent pickup. I haven't talked to Coach Sullivan or Coach Early about this, but I think this was a recent pickup. Bentonville is coming to Bologna. I mean, Ken Early will play anybody. But, I mean, Coach Sullivan has got that right now too, because he's got that game sandwiched in between a BB series. Oh, and then right after the Bentonville game, you come back next Tuesday and you got a doubleheader with the Benton Panthers, the number 1 ranked team in Class 5A.
I don't know that I want that lineup. BB twice, Bentonville, and Benton twice.
And then you've got Bryant next Friday on the 9th.
Now, maybe if I have Bentonville's squad, I'd be okay with that lineup. But if I'm Bologna, they're good, and like you said, they split tonight with BB. They're a really good team. Bologna has looked good all year, and we haven't talked about them a lot. And I've kind of heard the same thing. Don't talk about us. We don't want to jinx anything. That kind of stuff. Well, guess what? When you win games, you get mentioned, and you're going to get mentioned a little. So we won't say too much. But Bologna's playing really good ball right now. BB continues to look strong. Like I said, they got the split tonight with Bologna. Especially, Jordy Leffert looked like what I just saw the box score, but it looked like a really good game in that second game. And she has gotten stronger all year long for BB. But yeah, I'm not sure that I want that lineup that Bologna has in that 5-game stretch. But the better competition you play, the better you are. That's one thing that we did this week. For us is we invited over the last 2 weeks, we've tried to invite as much competition as we could get to get ready for districts and regionals and states. So sometimes it works out great. Sometimes it bites you.
I said this before when we did the preview pod, but literally they've got, Kendall Chambly is a freshman that's contributed heavily for them, started just about every game and out. I know right field, but kind of contributed in the outfield. But you think about that junior and that senior class in particular, the 2025s. I mean, Lila Toll, who unfortunately didn't get to play the past 2 years as she signed with Baylor, she's having a great year, pitching a little bit, of course, playing her natural, had a insane catch to where she was like bunny hopping that she caught is like a line drive, and she just jumped up and got it. But there's so many of these kids that we have covered for what seems like forever. Olivia Cates, shout out to her. She's one of their junior outfielders, recently committed to Monticello, one of the best bats in the state, if you ask me. Especially, she's a slapper, big time bat there, though. I mean, I think she was on one of our all-star teams last year, hit like over 550, something like that. But this is one of the more experienced teams in the state. They're very talented, but especially these 25s and 26s. I mean, they have a lot of innings under their belt.
And I'll say, without a doubt, Olivia Cates is one of the kids that has impressed me for several years now. Speed, great bat, just everything about that kid to me screams that she could go play at a high level in college. And congratulations to her. I did see that earlier today, actually, where she committed to University of Arkansas Monticello. And of course, Toll going to Baylor, that's huge. There's so many more kids that we could and should be mentioning down that lineup that they are loaded with talent. I mean, there's no doubt about it. They are loaded with talent. And I'm not going to say it might not be their year this year. They're playing as well as they played in 3 or 4 years that I've covered them. So I'm looking forward to see what they do over the next 2 or 3 weeks, and especially this 5-game stretch. Let's see how that goes.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too, is a lot of it over the last 2 years in particular, they have dealt some injuries, but I'm not going to say they were bad in the circle necessarily. They just were a little bit. I think the word that Kevin Sullivan used was that Coach Sullivan told me before last season was it's the lightest in the circle I've ever been in terms of like just youth and stuff like that. So now that they seem to be healthy and everything's really just come together, I mean, they're the team that we really thought that they could be. So we'll see if that continues. But now as we head on down to Class 4A, so Jared, we talked a good bit, kind of like the discussion we just went in 5A. We talked a good bit about 5A or 4A last week, so we won't spend a ton of time on it. But man, I'll tell you what, we knew that P Ridge was good. P Ridge has been number one, other than the past 2 years, they've been number one every week except for the final poll when they got state runner up. So we know what kind of team P Ridge has. They're playing incredible softball for another year, and but 4A for the most part, and I am not dogging or hating whatsoever, but it's been as a whole a little bit inconsistent lately. Monticello, other than P Ridge, has been probably the most consistent team in that mix. They have played very, very well. This Monticello team this year, we weren't really sure what things were going to look like because they came into the year with some key injuries. I think they actually were missed. They got one that's going to be out for the whole year. And I know we've talked about, I probably need to get an exact number because we keep kind of guessing here, but they've had some of those return. And a really big thing is Elena Lau got off to and she was our team funded player of the week this week. And she's been a great hitter and a great pitcher and I know, especially in those early stages of her varsity career, she went through some injuries, but she got off to a slow start at the plate this year, but she has really found her bat, had 3 home runs against Warren last week, went 6 for 7 on the week against Warren and Star City team that we have ranked. So this Monticello team was one that played, really a lot of the girls that are currently on this team, they played really the past 2 years so well through the regular season, did really well, like when in district region, or I don't remember if they had a district tournament or not, but played well at regionals, and then it just didn't go well at the state tournament. This is the year that I really do feel like that they can make. Now they got to the quarterfinals last year. Of course, that they had a bye week, but I think that this could possibly be the team because they seem to not only have they played more consistently in the second half, they are just continuing, it seems like, to heat up more and more as we go along. And you want to do that in April and late April and May, not February and March. Really couldn't be a more perfect time.
I definitely believe that Monticello may be the hottest team in 4A right now. They have definitely kind of, like you said, found their bats. Elena for sure has found her bat. Three bombs in one game, and I think she's hit, like, if I'm not mistaken, 5 in the last 5 or 6 games. She's basically averaging a home run a game over the last 5 or 6 games. Of course, we've talked at length in years past about she just knows how to crush a softball. She hits it in the face and drives it. She's one of the hardest swinging lefties that I've seen in the state of Arkansas. She knows how to put the bat on the ball, and she's a really great pitcher too. She's a great kid, a great defender when you stick her at first base. When she's not pitching or anything else, she's just a quality softball player from top to bottom. And Monticello for sure has found their bats and found a little fire and got something going, and they definitely have something cooking down there right now. I think they're playing probably the most consistent in 4A outside of P Ridge. P Ridge has been really rock solid, and Emery Bolin is really rolling again now and throwing the ball really well. And if you can get her throwing like she's capable of, and the rest of the team playing well and hitting well behind her and playing decent defense, P Ridge is just lights out. Gentry, we've talked about multiple times, being right there, right behind them, and that being a strong conference up there. And then when you drop below that and you start looking at the rest of 4A, man, there's so much up in the air. Malvern is amazing for 2 or 3 games, and then they'll turn around and lose a game that you're like, your head scratching again. And then Bauxite has looked great, at times, and is a powerhouse at times. And, it's just everywhere you look. Nashville, plays really well, and then they don't quite look like themselves for a game or two, and then they play really well for several games. There's so much up in the air in 4A. Man, I don't know where it's going to end up when you start looking past maybe the top 3 to 4 teams, because there's a lot of stuff that could happen, and there's a lot of those teams. There's 6 or 7 teams in 4A that are capable of beating anybody in 4A on any given night.
I will say this, and we'll kind of just use this as more of a teaser and keep it in our back pocket, because a lot of the things that I want to discuss have kind of happened in the past 2 nights. But you talked about Malvern. They have quietly won 10 of their last 11. Now, of course, they took one on the chin to Nashville a couple weeks ago, but that was also, not making any excuses, but that was also like a 1-1 game, and then like a 4-1 game, and then the wheels just kind of fell off for Malvern. I think it was like in the 5th or 6th, kind of right there at the end. And other than that, I mean, they have played some really good ball. They beat Sheridan in the last week. On Tuesday night, they beat Bauxite again, and so I think that was a 10-8 game. So Malvern, I want to make sure I said that, because I'm going to get in trouble from someone in Orange if I don't. But that's going to be one that we talk about. Bauxite, they've been on a skid. Now, granted, Malvern, like I said, is hot, and Sheridan is starting to heat up a little bit. But Bauxite, as of Monday and Tuesday, have been shut out in back-to-back games. Now, they won their previous 4 before that in games they should have won against Mills and Fountain Lake and East Ham. So it's not like that, they're just on like a major losing streak, or I don't want to make sure I don't paint that picture or anything. But also Nashville, talked about them. I think you mentioned them in the mix. That's one that we'll touch on. We'll go a little bit more in depth on 4A like on next week's show, because there's a lot more stuff from this week that we'll need to put into that. But stay tuned. We got plenty of stuff to talk about for multiple teams in Orange, and kind of more of a 4A outlook, and we'll hopefully find out a little bit more this week. So on down to 3A. We'll get into a little bit more 3A talk, since 3A and 5A kind of felt like that we didn't have as much to discuss last week. So we'll try to hit a little bit more on this. But Jared, let's talk about Lavaca for a second. So the Lady Arrows, they have been a really kind of a quietly good team over 2A in recent memory. This year they moved up to that 3A4 league has been really quiet. Even though Hackett moved out and moved down to 2A, you look at Lavaca, you look at Lamar, you look at Who else? Mansfield might not be the Mansfield of the last couple of years. When you lose an Allison Edwards and co, some of the girls from that 2024 class, that's going to happen. There's one more in that mix that I know I'm missing. I'm going to have to look it up because I know there's 4 that are pretty quality squads. But the Arrows, they've pretty much been in our Super 7, or at least the outside looking in, really more so the outside looking in all year, because they had a good start. They played Lincoln, they played Van Buren at the beginning, played Hackett, lost by 4 runs. But since then, other than 11-1 loss to Greenwood in the back half, they've lost 1 game basically since spring break, and that was to 5A Greenwood. Had a big win over Mansfield last week, had a big win over Lamar. That Lamar game actually that sealed the conference championship for them. Boonville was the other team I was thinking of in the 3A4. I knew that I was missing one, but Boonville's been playing pretty well. They've won like 7 of their last 8. So they've been one of those that have been trying to adapt to life without Lexi Franklin. Atkins was another that had a really big. We moved Baptist Prep in. Atkins lost to Glen Rose by a run. Thought, okay, let's kind of have some fun with this here. Let's see if this will maybe give some motivation to any. Let's see if Baptist Prep is motivated by being in the outside looking in. Let's see if Atkins is motivated by them being taken out. And I think Atkins won that game like 5-1 or something like that. So those have kind of been those teams that I just mentioned. Those have kind of been the ones that have been maybe on the outside looking in. I think Lavaca really took that next step, and we moved up to number 5. Very quality team they are. They've got kind of like we were talking about with Valonia a second ago. Then 5A, you look at their pitcher, Hannah Winchester and Macy Irby. Hannah's pitched about 10, 11 more innings than Macy has, but they have been a really solid duo there in the circle. Also, Maylee Stockton's batting over 500. Kyla Force, who has been a great catcher for them. I think it was either last year or the year before, she broke her, I think maybe her sophomore year, she broke her leg and didn't get to play most of the year, but she's slashing 500, 541, 741. Just having a great year, 30 RBI. So this Arrows team, we've been paying attention to them all year. We've thought highly of them. I think they proved that, so obviously they proved they won a conference championship and they've beaten some good teams while doing it. But that's one that we need to look at probably just a little bit harder as we get into the deep postseason play here.
Well, looking at them in the years past, they've always been, like you said, a pretty quietly good team. And I think the reason that we say they were quietly a good team is when I look at their past years, they were good overall, won more games than they lost, but they lost those close games by 1 and 2 runs. And this year, the difference is kind of like we mentioned with Whitehall earlier, they're winning those close games by 1 and 2 runs. They found that recipe, they found that formula for success. And, Hannah Winchester has always been a really good arm. And I don't know Macy nearly as well as I've seen Hannah throw the ball in person several times. Macy, I have not seen in person throwing the ball. So I can't really compare them without having seen them both. But I can tell you for sure that Hannah Winchester is a really good quality arm. And if they both have similar numbers or been throwing similar innings, then so is the other one. Having a little bit of depth with 2 arms there and their bats, from what I can tell and what I've seen on box scores, their bats have been a little better this year overall. So if you're throwing the ball a little better and you're hitting the ball a little better, that's that difference between, losing those close ball games to winning those close ball games, and the difference in coming in maybe 3rd or 4th in a conference to winning the conference. They definitely have looked strong and had some quality wins this year. And it's made a lot of us that haven't always paid as close attention to them as we should have to start looking a little harder. Just like you just said, it's time to start taking notice and seeing what they do in this postseason run.
I've actually talked to quite a few people about 3A really over the past week or so. I actually talked to a couple people from DeWitt, and they're even like, man, look, DeWitt, I think they started at number 2. Lincoln started at number 1. Then DeWitt was number 1 for a couple of weeks, and Mayflower took that spot. And even there, I've even had them say, look, Mayflower's the top team in 3. I think it's pretty consensus that Mayflower has earned that right. Then they also be a really good Tuckerman team, really good 2A ranked Tuckerman team, top 4 team. like 7-3 on Monday night. So yeah, this Mayflower squad just continues to prove what they can do. DeWitt won another conference championship. I think that's back to back for the Lady Dragon or the Dragonettes, maybe 3 in a row, possibly. Harding Academy is one we hadn't talked a whole lot about. I'll tell you, Jared, I really like Ace Ellis. I love this group that they have. They got some great freshmen. Of course, Ace has been they're pretty much their main arm for the Lady Wildcats since since her freshman year. And Mackenzie Bird is another one. I think it's Corey Hastings was the one that I was thinking of, the 2028 that Coach Francis has been really high on. Simmons, I can't remember her first. Coach Paul Simmons is the head coach at Harding University for football. His daughter's really good. I mean, they've got a really good core, and I can see why Coach Francis wanted to stick around before he joins the Harding football team full time. But this was a squad that went to Florida or Alabama over spring break, competed against some great competition, got some more really good looks there. I don't think we've talked about, even though they've been pretty high in our rankings, I don't think we've talked about them a whole lot. But I think probably my biggest questions are, what can they do? Talking about Harding Academy, and also still, I'm Smackover is the hot team in the 3A7 right now, kind of in that South region. If you're not, other than DeWitt, if you're looking at the entire South region, Smackover has kind of been that 3A team that's been really hot. Love what we've seen from Falk in some games. Love what we've seen from Genoa in some games. I just still don't know what to think about that conference, Jared. I really don't. I mean, yes, Smackover has proven they're 15-1 or whatever it is. Like, yeah, they've proven because they've beaten both of these teams. But I still think any of those three can make some noise in the postseason. I really do.
Well, we got a lot of lists there that you touched on, and I'll go back to the start of the list and go on down. You were talking about Mayflower and talking about Harding Academy, and you mentioned earlier Atkins. Atkins has been in that conversation for year after year after year of contending for a state title, and I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not sure that they're not going to be able to at least be in that conversation to be in state tournament there. Atkins, everybody kind of wrote them off early because they lost so much, and you lose somebody like Libby May. But they've had a couple of what we would call ugly losses. But they've looked pretty decent at times too, and looked like kind of the Atkins at old. And I'll give Presley Boger props that she's come in and had really big shoes to fill and coming in behind Libby May, and she's done a good job. She's thrown the ball very solid. Their bats and defense have held up, and they're doing okay this year. And I think they're looking a little stronger down the line here. I think that Mayflower and DeWitt are going to be really hard to beat in 3A. And then when you start talking on down, I think Harding Academy is really good. I think Lamar has got so much talent that if they can find a way to put it back together, that they are going to be in that conversation. Smackover looks great. Lincoln has always got to be mentioned, as a possibility. And Falk, Smackover, and Genoa, I think you put those teams in a bag and shake them up, and who falls out first might be the one that wins it. I mean, there's so much parity there, and they have different strengths and weaknesses. You just don't know who's going to win out if you go there. And all three of them are pretty good ball teams. And when you start crossing the lines into these other conferences and regionals and on, there's a lot of quality there, and they may go upset a few of these teams that have been more recently powerhouses, over the last 2 or 3 years. There's a lot of talent in 3A, and it's just kind of all over the place.
Down in Class 2A, speaking of talent all over the place, this is the class that I'm probably the most excited to watch unfold. I think maybe other than 5A, and probably throw 4A in this mix as well, I do feel like, well, past Hackett, this is probably the most hard to decide, because when you think of it, but a lot of it is just because of the pitching, man. I mean, you just look at our Super 7 this week. Hackett, and a lot of the teams are still there. Hackett, Woodlawn, Riverside. So Hackett, D1 pitcher, Woodlawn, P4 pitcher, Riverside, D2 pitcher. Quitman, I don't think they have anybody committed, but they've got some good pitchers. Tuckerman, they're young. They don't have anybody committed. Desark, D1 pitcher. Carlisle does not have, they've got some college kids, but they don't have, I don't think any of their pitchers are committed. Cutter Morning Star, JUCO pitcher going to National Park. EPC, sophomore pitcher that's been injured. I like, there is so much college talent in this little classification. There's more in this classification than I think in a lot of, I mean, when you look about from top to bottom in a lot of the other ones, and not just like, going to, like just some random college in Louisiana. I mean, these are notable programs that people are going to. And more than anybody about 2A, because that's the one that you coach in. This is going to be an extremely, I know Hackett is the favorite until somebody proves otherwise, as the defending 3A champion and what they've done. Which, shout out, by the way, to Hackett and Mackenzie Freeman, who as a pitcher earned her 94th career win, which is a AAA state record. Loved the pictures that they put with all four of her catchers. Taylor, I can't remember all of Sarah White, I think was from in 2022 when Mackenzie was a freshman. Also Taylor Nichols. I don't want to name the other because I know I'm going to forget one of them, but that was really cool. I loved how they did that, where they had all the pictures with all of her catchers to show that relationship between battery mates. But I'm just stoked, Jared. It's going to be probably a lot more fun for me than it will be for you, but it is going to be fun to watch. And I say for you because I'll be able to watch it kind of as that casual fan. You'll have some dog in the fight when all this stuff is unfolding.
This has been a conversation that I have heard over and over and over all over the state this year. I've had people text me. I've had people call me. I've had sports media people bring it up, and they were like, how in the world does 2A have so incredible pitching talent all in 1 year? And I'm telling you, I mean, Claire Womack, Lily Faye McWhirter, Mackenzie Freeman, Jaylee, of course, is in a conversation of being a really good pitcher. I mean, but they're like everywhere you look in 2A, Kaylee McDonald is out of this world. I mean, the kid has crazy talent, and she strikes out kids at an incredible rate. But all of these great pitchers in 2A, like, there's more total talent. Not saying that they're any better than anybody in any other class or anything like that, because there's some incredible individually talented pitchers in all the classifications. But I don't know that there's another class that has as much widespread pitching talent as 2A does. They're just not there like 2A has it. You're muted.
Son of a biscuit. I did it again. Northwest Arkansas and 2A probably, like, you think about like Dalen at Rogers, even one we don't talk about a lot is Joker. I think it's Jocelyn Strickland Joker at Rogers Heritage, but Emory Bowl and Lincoln Brinkley Morton. Of course, who's the other one I'm missing? Like I said, Darby Burnett at Bentonville. So yeah, I would say Northwest Arkansas and 2A probably has the best, like as a whole, probably the best.
Talent in Northwest Arkansas when it comes to pitching, but a lot of it's scattered over 2 or 3 or 4 different classifications. Even though it's all concentrated, there's a lot of really talented pitchers up there. You have some in at least 3 different classifications. When you start looking at 2A, and they're from all over the state, different places in 2A, but man, 2A across the board, there's a ton of pitching talent. It's crazy to think out of the lower 2A's definitely got the most total pitching talent. And like I said, I can't say enough about players like Kaylee McDonald and Lily Faye McWhirter and Kenzie Freeman. And I mean, there's just incredible talent. And if you want to start totaling up strikeouts, man, you talk about piling up strikeouts between 3 or 4 of those kids. This last week, Jaylee passed 800. Lily Faye passed 800.
Lily Faye did too, yeah.
Kenzie passed 900. Kaylee McDonald is a kid that could probably put up 1,200 in her career at the rate she's going. It's just insane. It really is. I have no idea where Claire Womack is, but it's got to be really high. It's got to be up there.
I think Claire's might be able, because remember her freshman year, she didn't pitch until the postseason because she was hurt. So that probably, lessened it some, but I would say she's probably around the 300 to 400 range, somewhere in there.
I bet
maybe a little more, maybe 5, maybe. Yeah.
Just crazy pitching talent. If we get off the pitchers and start talking about the teams, I'm gonna tell you in 2A, like Hackett is. I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna make people mad, but Hackett is the most complete team in 2A without a doubt. They have hitting, they have defense, they have pitching across the board. Hackett is the most complete team. Now that's not to say they're gonna win it all, because you never know how something's going to happen, or if they have a bad game or anything that can happen. But Hackett's the most complete team across the board in 2A. And then Woodlawn's a really good team. Quitman's a really good team. Desark, especially when Kaylee McDonald's throwing like she can throw, is a really good team. Tuckerman looks great. Riverside looks great. I personally like, Cutter Morning Star is playing the best ball that they played in their, in the 4 years that we've been involved as far as our stuff. Horatio is a really, really good, complete team that can play defense, hit, and their pitching has really come on. They're going to be a really strong team throughout this process of regionals and state and districts. Man, there's just everywhere you look in 2A, there's a lot of parity. There's a lot of quality. 2A may be the most competitive classification down 10, 12 teams deep this year of anybody we see.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I mean, when you talk about just, especially in the circle, and yeah, there's plenty of hitters that you could talk to as well. But I think that was you that said this. Well, you and I were we weren't doing it on a podcast. We were just talking. But I mean, especially in high school, I mean, any kind of baseball, softball, pitching is obviously a massive part of it. But in high school softball, especially small school softball, it's dang near everything. And Kaylee McDonald's a perfect example. Think about the amount of 1-0, 2-0, 2-run, 2-1, 3-run games. Now, Kaylee, I know, is a little bit, she's been playing in the field a little bit, kind of nursing a lingering injury and everything. But that's the point right there, is to show you just important. And then you've been in a lot of these with Jaylee, where y'all, the Horatio game, what was the Horatio game? 2-1, wasn't it?
2-1. Yeah, it was a dogfight. Their pitcher threw really well. Their defense was lights out. I would say, our kids played great defense that day, and Jaylee threw the heck out of the ball that day, and we beat them 2-1. We had another just grudge match with Foreman and won 4-1 with two great pitchers. That's another pitcher we hadn't even mentioned in 2A. Mallory Abercrombie is a really good pitcher in 2A. Throws the ball really hard, and we managed to squeak one out there, 4-1. And I'll tell you a team that I was really impressed with that we haven't talked a whole lot about on here, but we went and played them last week, and we went to their place. Palestine Wheatley is a lot better team than I had ever realized till we saw them in person. Their defense and their hitting is legit. Like they're a really solid little ball team. So props out to them, and probably the best sportsmanship of any team we've seen in years. Just super friendly people that were very welcoming and went out of their way to make our kids feel welcome to make that trip over there. So to give them a shout out, they're really good. I meant to bring some notes, but I'll tell you, there's 2 or 3 little kids on that team that are really good and need to be mentioned, and I'll try to remember it and throw their names out later on. But there's some kids that are quietly up there that should be going and playing some pretty major college softball.
And then last but not least, in Class 1A, so at least once or twice a year, Jared, it's a tradition. We always have traditions on this show, on baseball side and softball. We always talk about the craziness in the 1A2, and we have plenty of it. Now, I haven't even really gone through games for the beginning of this one. We're going to solely focus on the madness that I will say this was probably the hardest week to rank 1A. 1A usually takes care of itself for the most part. And you got Taylor in the past years. It's been mostly Taylor. We've seen Bradley in that number one spot occasionally, and Scranton this year has been in that like 2 to 3 range. And then it's kind of changed here and there. But okay, so on Monday, Calico Rock beats Westside Greers Ferry 9-8. Tuesday, Concord 11-1 over Viola. Wednesday, Viola. There was a doubleheader, 4-3 over Calico Rock. Viola won, and then Calico beat Viola 5-3 in the second game. So that kind of threw a little bit of a wrench in the rankings. Now, I know there's probably a lot of questions right now about Westside, because by now you're thinking, okay, yeah, they took them some time because they won a state championship in basketball. It's going to take them time to gel, like you touched on just a second ago, and we've talked about really since basketball season ended. I do know that they do have one of their pitchers was pretty much the one that they expected to throw significant innings, has been dealing with an injury. So, Ashlyn Cossey, who was the MVP of the 1A state tournament for basketball, she's a great athlete, but not a natural pitcher. Kind of like Lacey Baker is. That Lacey was one of the last remaining on the Westside team that played as a freshman in the 2022 state championship against Taylor. And she pitched a good bit. I think Lacey's actually pitched the past couple of years since McKenna Biddle graduated, but she's not a natural pitcher either. So again, it's not that these, we see that a lot where kids pitch out of necessity. So obviously you'd love to have them in other, at other spots, but that's just not how it works right now. Jared, I don't see any issues with the bats. I mean, you look at some of the scores, especially, and then you see like Addie Overturf at the leadoff spot. She's hit, I've seen some 2 for 3 games, some 3 for 3 games. She's got around like 4 or 5 home runs on the season. It's not the bats. I think more so in the circle. I've seen a lot of walks. Now I haven't watched this team play in person. I wanted to go to the Scranton game, couldn't work it out. But I think that's kind of where it's at. I still have a lot of high hopes. Yeah, we've got they started at 2 or 3, and now they're 6th this week in the Super 7. When you have a team with that much talent, you can't give up on them, especially in a classification where there's probably realistically about 2 or 3 contenders for a state title, and then it's kind of just a little bit of throwing darts past there. I still think that there is plenty of hope for this Westside team. They've just lost some games, some close ones. They've won some close. I think they lost Equipment by a run or something like that. So plenty of hope for this team. It's just maybe they've had to make some adjustments that they didn't quite expect.
Well, with Westside, I do think that not having a just true natural dominant pitcher is gonna be the one thing that's holding back, because they've got good bats, they've got a pretty good defense. They have solid pitching in the girls that are throwing the ball, but like you said, maybe not just a really overachieving dominant pitcher. That like you have at Taylor, you've got Ayla Buford that can just sit any team down on any given day when she's doing what she can do. At Scranton, you have not only Delaney Maynard that's a really strong pitcher, but you have her little sister Brecken that's come on really strong this year, and they're throwing in tandem and throwing really well. Westside doesn't have that name brand pitcher that's there to dominate, but they do have really good bats, and they have a solid defense. One thing an old ball coach told me one time, he said, if you can't out-pitch them, you got to out-hit them. And so Westside does have the bats in that lineup that if they can't out-pitch somebody, if they can find their bats, they might can out-hit them. So they can play with or beat anybody in 1A if they can get their bats on fire and find a little bit of pitching and defense to go with it. They're a really talented, really good team. Taylor and Scranton both are really talented, really good teams. Concord's look pretty good. And
Concord has looked good.
I struggle when you drop past those 4. And it's not to say that there aren't 2 or 3 other good teams in 1A that have a chance. And Bradley has looked good at times this year against some quality competition.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Bradley, man. When they play Taylor or somebody, it goes south. But otherwise, they've looked pretty solid against a good schedule.
If I was laying my money on the table right now, I would say that the state championship in 1A goes to one of 4 schools. And I would probably narrow it down more to that to 2, but I'll leave it at this. It's going to be Taylor, Scranton, Westside, or Concord. That's just my opinion, and people can get mad at me for saying what I think, but I feel like state championship in 1A will go to one of those 4 schools, and I really feel like there's 2 that have a little bit of an advantage over the rest. But there's going to be, you got to go play the game because you never know. An injury could change something. A bad bounce, ball gets booted around at the wrong time, an error at the wrong time. So that's why we keep playing the game instead of making predictions on who gets it, and that's who gets the state championship. You go play the game.
That's exactly right. And, this time last year, even though Scranton had started to heat up a little bit after spring break, but you remember, Jared, in the pieces that I wrote, like for regionals and like just some like preview stuff that I don't know that I really mentioned them much because I was like, well, they don't play in a great conference. Their region is not the strongest so I'm just like, it's hard to tell. And then they beat Viola, and then when they beat Bradley in the semifinal, I'm like, okay. And then obviously, they're going to state, so they're one of the final 2 teams left standing. I'm like, okay, this is a really good team. And then it was just, as I've said, either last week or the week before, I don't think that game, the score was a resemblance of how good Taylor. Yes, Taylor does what Taylor does. They've done that for 7 straight years. But I think it's just at that point when Taylor has been to that state championship round so many times, and Scranton was there for the first time, obviously the first time for those girls, and then the first time in 10 years since 2015. Sometimes the lights get a little bright, even though the lights weren't on. It was during an afternoon game. I don't think that's going to happen to Scranton this year if they do make it back. They know they have experience now. I think they had 1 senior maybe last year. So all of them got a chance not only to see what it's like to play there, to play in it, but to prep for it and the preparation that it takes. So yeah, I'm with you. I don't think I think anybody that follows softball in this state will agree with that. And that's the beauty of district and regional tournaments. That's where it's out to prove us wrong. So, there might be a team that pops up out of nowhere that I certainly feel confident that out of the teams that we have in our Super 7 and you can call it the top 10 or whatever you want, but the Super 7 and the outside looking in, I feel extremely confident it's going to be one of those 10 teams. I think that's a safe bet there. So I do want to touch on something real quick. Many of you saw that I did make it. So if you saw my Facebook on Monday or Tuesday, you heard me or saw me post that I am actually going to be moving on to another job, same career. I'm just going to be moving to the college game. Still will have a part in high school. There's no way I could ever step away for good. I want to always try to help the state, these kids, these coaches as much as I possibly can. But I'll be mostly covering the Razorbacks moving forward. I accepted a job with hogbeat.com, which is the Arkansas Rivals version, the Arkansas Razorback version of Rivals, I guess I should say. They're owned by Yahoo, of course. But just something I couldn't turn down. And I'll talk more about that probably on the final episode, just because that doesn't mean that that's the end of softball. Look, there was softball coverage before Jared and I did this. There's a lot of people that does great things, but we're going to try to do everything that we can to make sure that rankings continue, that a podcast continues, and I'm going to do all that I can to help. I won't be a part of that, at least heavily, just because, I just frankly won't have the time to commit with what this job will demand. So, but we're going to do what we can to try to keep everything as consistently, and, we'll have a whole full off season to plan that. And we'll get right now, I'm going to do what senior parents are doing, including Jared, and I'm just going to enjoy every second of the ride. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to try to think about it too. I start on May 1st. So by the time this drops, it'll be tomorrow, but I still have to fulfill my obligations, that I committed to for this 2025 season. And I'm very happy to do so. So that's all I will say about it for now. And then I'll circle back on this once we get back to once we finish up with everything after the state finals. So again, a big thank you to Athletic Field Service of Arkansas, Boom Boom Floor Shine, and Chinook Seedery for making all of this possible. Make sure you are subscribed to the show, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio on the audio platforms, and then, of course, YouTube. You can hit that bell button so that way you are notified anytime we release an episode. And so, Jared, that's all I got. If you got anything else, we'll wrap it up.
Just briefly touch on the deal with Hogbeat with you. Man, we definitely will absolutely figure out a way to make sure that that the high school athletes are covered. We don't know what it's going to look like yet, but we're definitely going to have some type of product out there where we're still doing something for these kids and doing rankings and podcasts and doing stuff. We're going to look into that. I will be heavily involved in making sure that happens, and Kyle's going to continue to support us in whatever we end up doing on that. We're gonna keep rolling with covering high school athletes in some form. Definitely. Outside of that, I'll say this, Kyle. I've enjoyed working with you doing this for. I guess this is the 4th season now. Learned a lot. Got a chance to talk about a lot of kids and get their names out there and try to help give them any promotion we can to push them to the next level. And gotten to know a lot of good people in the industry, and I'm looking forward to what we can work out for the future. And one thing I do want to say real quick, going into yesterday's ball game, I got a call that my mom was headed to the hospital again. She's been fighting a lot of health problems. I don't know how many texts, phone calls, different things from people in the softball community. Praying for my mom, praying for our family, reaching out, asking if they could do anything. So I will say that this softball community is amazing, and that is very much appreciated. She has not done great since November, and we've fought a lot of things with her health, and my dad's health has not been great, and he's had a knee replacement and some other things going on. But I'm gonna tell you, I do really appreciate the outpouring of love and support from all of our softball family out there across the state.
Yeah, no question about it. That's something, and you and I, obviously, and I've raved about the support and the loyalty within the softball community. Look, we feel the wrath sometimes. That's part of it, but when it really comes down to it, we all take care of I think it's kind of one of those deals to even some of the ones that may not like us as much as others. I don't think there's anybody that doesn't like us necessarily, but there's others that are probably more fond of us than others are. I think it's kind of like one of those big brother, little brother type thing, or big sister, little sister type things. It's like, I can pick on you, but if somebody else, we take care of our own type deal. But I will say this straight up. I hope that between now and the last episode, I shed a tear, because because I definitely don't want to do that on air. I don't think I will, but I would prefer to do it, because this has meant an incredible amount to me. I mean, Jared, I've obviously, you've become a great, not just somebody I do this with, but a great friend. And, it's been a blast. And I don't want to talk like it's the end, because it's not, it's the end of my I'm probably not going to podcast at all for a little bit. I mean, it's a lot of work, and I've been podcasting. So I thought about it. Other than a break here or there, I have done a podcast every week just about since like the fall of 2017. So I love podcasting. It's a passion of mine. I've done it obviously for dang near a decade, and I love it. But I am kind of ready for a little bit of a break, just because it does take. I mean, it takes a lot of time. It's not just Jared and I hopping on here and talking about things, just because we are ultra smart people. We prep all week. I do. I mean, just alone before the day of the episode, I probably do up to 3 hours of prep between baseball and softball, and that's minimum. I love it. I'm not complaining. But it's a lot of work. And so, but this has been, Jared and I, and Cabo as well, we hear a lot, this is the best compliment we could receive, that the kids appreciate it, the parents appreciate it, but I can't express how much of a blessing you guys have been to me. And I mean, Jared, you're included, but everybody included in that, because this is kind of my escape from everything. Like, I love my career. I am the most blessed man on the planet. I work from home. I get to hang out with my kid who's going to be in school sooner than later. But, it's a lot of work too. And it's nice to just escape and talk about it, as opposed to having to, like, instead of all the prepping and everything like that. So I'll get more into it as far as just kind of what this is all meant to me and what you all mean to me, because it's a great deal. Whether you like me or not, I still love you. That's how I operate. So, yeah, that'll do it for this week. And then we'll talk more about that as we go. But next week, we'll talk about, we'll recap some district tournaments, preview a little bit of the regional tournaments, and of course, just talk about all of the top news from the prep softball world. So again, thank you all so much for the loyalty. Got a few more weeks here, I guess about a month or so before we wrap up the 2025 season, or about, I guess 3 weeks. It's less than a month now. So we'll enjoy every second that we can. Again, subscribe on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio. But for episode 71, this will do it. My name is Kyle Sutherland for Jared Hawthorn and all of us here. We will catch you next week.